Hi. I don't know if that will be my usual introduction when I am starting my videos, but hey, you'll get used to it. Let me try to regulate the light. Right? So we are back at reading our book and teaching ourselves how to read. If it's your first time discovering me, I am Bongo Jeuri, aka Mikileleti, but you can know me as Bongo Jeuri. And I am on a journey of growing myself mentally, emotionally, and even physically too. Like, yeah, I don't know. I was about to start explaining myself when I said physically, but I'm wondering why should I explain myself? Yeah, because I have that issue. I really do explain myself a lot. Anyway, this was not a time for me to yap. This was just an introduction, but you can clearly see the type of person I am. So I want us to read. I want us to continue reading this book, and if you have not watched my other videos, we have been reading this book and I'm reading it aloud because I'm teaching myself how to read again. I used to love reading, and somehow along the way I lost the passion, and anytime I could pick up a book to read, I'd feel overwhelmed. I'd feel like something just overpowers me. That's what I can say. So yeah, so right now I'm trying to get back to reading and loving to read novels. So yeah, welcome to this journey. So what I do is whenever I'm reading any chapter, I will write down the words that I have learned so far, and after that I go research on the words to know the meaning. I am so sad. Is it sad, or I am so, I don't know the right words to use. Like, I have disappointed myself because I have not researched the words that I had written down previously I think we are going to chapter 4, so in chapter 3 and also in chapter 1. Like, from I only researched some few words in chapter 1, but from chapter 1, from chapter 2, chapter 3, I have not done that. I don't and I feel like, oh, why am I struggling to talk? And I feel like that's not good of me. That's so wrong. So I should correct that. So yeah, on the next videos to come, I should have already researched all these words and got their meaning. But the problem is, I know myself. Like, when it comes to doing things, I love to do them thoroughly. Because now I know that is my weakness, it makes me feel lazy to do anything that makes me not to do it entirely, and then makes me feel disappointed at myself because I didn't do it in the first place. Do I make sense? Anyway, this was not a video for yapping. Let's continue with reading. We're gonna work on that. So we are in chapter 4, and if you're new here, I am reading a book by Tracy Kelly, and it says Murder at Longbourn. Welcome here. And one thing about this book is, in every chapter, before you continue with the story, you have to read a quote. And the quote of chapter 4 is, let me wait for that bike to pass so that we can read the quote. Yeah, we can continue with our, that was a commercial break. So let's continue reading. So the quote in chapter 4 says, what a swell party. What a swell party, a swell party. A swell, huh? A swagant, elegant party this is. Hey, I don't even understand what that quote is saying. What a swell party. A swell party. A swellagant, elegant party this is. I'm going to research on this quote. I've not gotten anything that it says. The quote is by Cole Porter. The quote is by Cole Porter. So let's continue. As I walked across the foyer toward the dining room, I could hear Frank Sinatra and Bing Crosby singing. Well, did you ever? It was one of Antwini's favorite songs by Cole Porter. Pausing in the doorway, I saw that Peter was dancing. And Antwini, that person, why is he doing that? Let me pause and then we continue. You can imagine it's very late, like it's roughly around 2 a.m. in the morning. In the morning, and it's still noisy. Like it's still noisy. And you think that this is the right time when not so many people are around, there is no motorbikes, that it's gonna be peaceful recording. It's still noisy. Anyway, even if it's noisy, we will still continue with what we are doing. So let's continue with the book. Let's continue with our reading. I've kept on saying let's continue. Oh, today, what day is it? Where was I? Let me start again. As I walked across the foyer towards the dining room, I could hear Frank Sinatra and Bing Crosby singing. Well, did you ever? It was one of Aunt Winnie's favorite songs by Cole Porter. Pausing in the doorway, I saw that Peter was dancing. Aunt Winnie was dancing. Aunt Winnie around the room and doing it quite gracefully, I had to admit. They made a pretty picture against the room's backdrop of soft lights and ice-covered windows. Aunt Winnie certainly had pulled out. Aunt Winnie certainly hadn't pulled out any stops in dressing for the evening, I thought. As I watched her twirl and dip in Peter's arms, she was wearing a silver lame top that was clearly intended to emphasize her ample cleavage. Her long black velvet skirt, which at first glance appeared demure, had an enormous slit up one side. I found myself thinking that Peter looked quite handsome too, until I sternly reminded myself that all men look good in a tux, especially expensive, well-tailored ones. They hadn't noticed me yet, which explained why I was able to overhear their conversation. Elizabeth's a lovely girl, Peter, Aunt Winnie said. You should ask her out. Peter's next words floated across the room and smacked me squaringly in the face. I'm not in the mood to date a girl on the rebound. If it's all the same to you. I must have made some sort of noise because at that moment they both turned away. They turned my way. Elizabeth, said Aunt Winnie with a smile, look at you. She crossed the room and hugged me, studying her up close. I saw that she hadn't gone all out just with her clothes. Her makeup was also quite extraordinary. Deep red bright rouge lipstick, bright rouge and silver yellow eyeshadow were all liberally applied. Her eyes even smeared greener than usual. Huh? Her eyes even seemed greener than usual, and I suspected colored contacts. Any concerns I might have had about overdoing my makeup evaporated upon seeing her. Next to Aunt Winnie, I could pass for a visitor from the Amish country. You look beautiful, sweetheart, she said. She turned back to Peter and in a loud voice demanded, "Doesn't she look beautiful?" Every inch of my face burnt hot with embarrassment and anger. Sneaking a look at Peter, I saw that he seemed equally uncomfortable. In fact, he appeared to have been struck mute. Ignoring his lack of reply, Aunt Winnie grabbed me by the hand and dragged me across the floor. "I know," she said in a chimpy face. You you two you two dance. I think we have enough time before the guests start arriving." For once Peter and I were in total agreement, and we both stumbled over ourselves in our excuses. "Aunt Winnie, really, I think I should check on the horse divorce. I probably should open the wine." "Nonsense," she said firmly, pushing me into Peter's arms. "Can I do all those things? I can." Hmm? "Nonsense," she said firmly, pushing me into Peter's arms. "I can do all those things. Now, dance." Peter shrugged. "I think she wants us to dance." "She might," I replied. "She's very hard to read sometimes." We moved around the room, neither of us saying much. For the first time, I was grateful that that dance lesson. For the first time, I was grateful that dance lessons at Miss Martin's schools for girls had been mandatory, because although my movements were mechanical, they were at least in step with Peter's. The silence between us was unbearable, and I frantically struggled for something to say. He already thought that I was a girl passed over by another man. I didn't want him to think I was a lousy conversational conversationalist as well. The trouble was I couldn't think of a damn thing to say. Desperate, I was just about to ask him whether he'd read any books lately when he spoke. "So, have you read any books lately?" I laughed. "What's so funny?" he asked. "I was about to ask you the same question, but I couldn't decide between that or what's your sign." He grimaced. "All right, fine." Oh, before I continue, the benefit of now researching words was I had already researched the meaning of grimaced. It is a facial expression, if I'm not wrong. Yeah, what is it? It's a facial expression expressing when somebody is expressing if they are annoyed. If they are annoyed, that was what I was trying to say. Okay. Why is sometimes talking a hard thing for me? You see why I need to read aloud? Because I need to get used to talking. If I don't do this, who will save me but myself? Anyway, let's continue. Where were we? He grimaced. "All right, fine. New question. What have you been up to for the past 15 years?" "Well, let's see," I said. "I finished school with a degree in English, which qualified me for either a low-paying secretarial job or an even lower-paying secretarial job." "Is that what you do then?" I shook my head. "Not anymore. I work as a fact checker for a local paper." "Sounds interesting." "It's not. What about you? What are you doing these days?" "Mainly, I have been working for my parents, helping them open hotels." Oh, my mind seemed or to be working in a slow motion. I could think of nothing besides my heart pride. Around me, Potter's "Let's Do It, Let's Fall in Love" played. Suddenly, Peter said, "I was surprised when Aunt Winnie told me that you were coming. I would have assumed that you would have big plans for the New Year's." but she said something about you and your boyfriend breaking up. I glanced sharply at him. Was he deliberately trying to rub it in? His face was unreadable. Yes, I said finally. Right. I did just end a relationship. Things were starting to get a bit too serious. Thankfully, my nose did not start growing with this last bit, but I couldn't stand the thought of him believing that I was some pathetic loser who'd come running to Aunt Winnie's for lack of better for lack of a better offer. And you, I asked sweetly. No one special in your life right now? No, either, I take it. His expression grew cool and I regretted my nastiness. This was no way to start the weekend, but before I could apologize, he said, actually, there is someone, Maggie, but she couldn't make it this weekend. She's visiting family. He abruptly stopped dancing and glanced at his watch. Speaking of which, I should go and check in now, he said. I promised to call before things got too busy here. Thanks for the dance, though. Releasing me, he turned away, walked up. Huh? Before, thanks for the dance, though. Releasing me, he turned and walked away. I was overcome by a certain chill and rubbed my hands off and down my arms for warmth. I mentally rolled my eyes at his arrogance in bringing up his girlfriend. No doubt he wanted to make it clear that he was off the market, as if he needed to worry about that. Peter McGowan was the last man I'd ever run after. He probably had a closet stuffed full of Argyle sweaters. Unfortunately, the thought of Argyle got me thinking about Mark. I wondered if he missed me or had tried to get in touch with me. More to give myself something to do other than stand alone in the middle of the dance floor, I decided to see if I had any messages. My cell phone was in my purse, which I had left in Antoine's office. I crossed the empty foyer and headed for it. Peppered in a faded vintage rose pattern, the tiny room was sparsely furnished with only a desk, chair, and filing cabinet. This was fortunate because with all the clutter that Antoine had amassed, she couldn't possibly fit anything else in the room. I pushed aside some catalogs and files on the wooden chair and sat down and retrieved my purse from underneath the desk. Flipping open my phone, I saw that I did indeed have 3 messages. My self-esteem rose a few notches as I entered my code to retrieve them. Maybe Mark had called me. I briefly entertained images of pinning away for me, him pinning away for me for the rest of his days while I pityingly sent him Christmas cards once in a while and encouraged him to get on with his life. The message, however, were not from Mark. One was from my mother, one was from Bridget, and the last was from Kit. She was calling to tell me that her party was starting at 9. In case you change your mind, I scrolled. Although I had repeatedly told her that I was going to Aunt Winnie's, she probably thought that I had made the whole thing up and was now huddled on my bed in the fetal position, growing myself on Ben and Jerry's. Gogging of fetal position, gogging myself on Ben and Jerry's. She was completely absurd. I hate Ben and Jerry's. I deleted her message with an angry jab of a few buttons. I was debating calling her back when I heard the front door open. Voices floated in on a blast of cold air. This is a horrible night to be out, really, Jackie. I don't know why I let you talk me into coming to this. I hate these things. They are so tiresome. I was it was a woman's voice. She spoke in a crisp, auto, autocratic tone. Next came Jackie's voice, all breathy and excited. Oh, don't be that way, Lini. It will be lots of fun. You'll see. I exited the office. In the foyer stood Jackie and a woman I assumed was Lynette, mainly because I had just overheard Jackie call her that. I'm clever that way. While the two women shared a certain physical characteristic, they were both in their late 70s and of a familiar height and build. They couldn't have been more different in their manner or dress. Lynette wore an extravagant fur coat over an elegant cream suit of cashmere. Jackie wore a serviceable black coat. Serviceable. Jackie wore a serviceable black coat over a plain black dress of thick wool. Lynette's face was artfully. Lynette's face was artfully, although heavily made up. Jackie wore no makeup. Lynette's silver upsweep was, upon closer inspection, actually a wig, but the effect was still regal. Jackie, once again, was almost hidden underneath an enormous hat. This one was black silk with a large white velvet peony pinned to the upturned brim. Jackie greeted me enthusiastically. Hello, Elizabeth. We aren't late, are we? The snow slowed us up. It's really it's really calming down now. Lynette was just saying how much she looked forward to the night. I ignored this little lie and lie, as did Lynette. Jackie turned to her friend and continued, Lynette, may I present Miss Reynolds' niece, Miss Elizabeth Parkham. Lynette extended a perfectly manicured hand. How do you do, Jackie? How do you do? Jackie's told me so much about you. This I did not doubt. It's very nice to meet you, I said. I understand that you have recently moved to the area. Yes, replied Lynette. I bought one of those cottages down by the beach. I had seen the houses she was referring to on the drive, hmm? referring to on the drive in yesterday. To refer to them as cottages was like calling Versailles Versailles a house in the country. Moving is always such a hassle, she continued. But of course, having Jackie with me has been a tremendous help. Have you two been friends long? I asked. Jackie opened her mouth to answer, but it was Lynette who spoke first. Oh, yes. Oh, my yes. Jackie and I have known each other all our lives. We have actually distant we are actually distant cousins. My grandmother and Jackie's grandmother were second cousins or something like that, and we were roommates in college. We were inseparable back then, but after I got married, we lost touch. Lynette's husband passed away last year, said Jackie. Oh, I said, I'm sorry. Lynette waved her hand slightly. Thank you, but he's in a better place right now. Place? But he is in a better place now. She said matter factly. She said matter of factly, that's actually how Jackie and I came to be reunited, as it were. When news of Marty's death was posted in our um, Alma Matters newsletter, Jackie saw it and wrote me. Well, once we caught up with one another and compared notes on our lives, and I learned of Jackie's situation, I insisted that she come and live with me. Jackie ducked her Jackie ducked her head a little. Lynette's been very kind, she said softly. Although Lynette waved her hand again, as if to dismiss Jackie's words, I noticed that she was smiling slightly. I felt a pang of sympathy for Jackie. I had known Lynette all of I had known Lynette all of 2 minutes, but she had already managed to make it clear that Jackie owed her current improved situation to Lynette's own generosity. It struck me that while Lynette Westin might be generous to those in need, she also likes to be recognized for it. I wondered if it was difficult for Jackie to live with constant reminders of her benefactor's kindness. Talking, Taking their coats, I led them into the dining room, where Peter and Aunt Winnie stood talking with Joanne and Henry. Henry peered proudly in his tax, mentioning often that he'd purchased it at Mr. one of Miss Dubois' favorite stores. Joanne's bright red dress was very festive, but instead of adding color to her complexion, it had the opposite effect. She looked deathly pale. While Aunt Winnie made the introduction, I went to the kitchen to get the trays of her divorce. I had just returned when it when I had just returned with it when Daniel arrived, looking like he had stepped off the cover of JQ magazine. I deduced that the people with him were the Ramses. Gerald was a tall man who appeared to be in his early 60s. His thick mane of silver hair was meticulously brushed back from his face, and his eyes were as cold, almost trans- translucent shade of blue. I don't know if it was his solid build or direct, unblinking gaze, but he had a definite presence, and it wasn't a pleasant one. There was a ruthlessness in his expression, re- reminiscent reminiscent of creatures in the animal kingdom that eat their young. In fact, if it weren't for the young woman standing just behind him, who I could only assume was his daughter, Polly, I wouldn't have been surprised to find out that he had. She was probably in her early 20s, but her plain gown with the Peter Pan collar made her seem younger. Her shoulder-length jet black hair was pulled back in a tortoise shell headband, further emphasizing her youthful appearance. The only discordant note was her eyes, large and green. They slant they slanted up like a cat like they slanted up like a cat's. Framed by delicately winged eyebrows, they hinted at an exotic and mature nature underneath the otherwise unremarkable and childlike facade. Next to her stood a woman who, by virtue of the fact that she was both blonde and tan, I took to be Gerald's wife, Lauren. With her heart-shaped face, large blue eyes, and faintly vacant expression, she reminded me of my first Barbie doll. Her pink, sleek, her pink, sleek, her pink silk dress was stunning in its simplicity, always an indication of expense. In fact, I suspected I could live off its cost for months. I felt a pang of jealousy. Here was the woman who purportedly held Daniel's interest. Any hope I had of her being nothing more than a nasty little freckled thing with money vanished. Beside me, Lynette sniffed contemporaneous. Lynette sniffed contemptuously. What a pretty dress Lauren has on tonight, although I've always thought of pink as a young woman's color. A rather catchy remark, considering Lauren couldn't be more than 45, but one I secretly enjoyed nevertheless. Aunt Winnie rushed over to greet the newcomers. Well, hello, Gerald. Happy New Year, Lauren. You look lovely. That's a gorgeous dress. And Polly, I'm so glad to see you, my dear. Winfred, said Gerald with a curt nod. Lauren and Polly each smiled a bit shy and shifted uncomfortably. Peter appeared with a tray of glasses filled with champagne. Following his cue, I picked up my tray of assorted hors d'oeuvres and followed. Who are you? Demanded Gerald of me as he reached for a crab cake. Gerald, said Antwini, this is my grandniece, Elizabeth Parker. She is staying with me for the weekend. How do you do? I inquired. He ignored me and regarded the room with an appraising eye. I see you have made some changes to the place since wasn't here last. I wasn't I wasn't here last, Winfred. Yes, replied Antwini, turning to admire the room's blue and white motif. Do you like it? No. Beside him, Lauren gasped slightly. Jerry, she said in a resigned tone. It was clear that she didn't expect her admonishment to have any effect on her husband's manners. Huh? Admonishment ni reaction. What is that? What is that? To have any effect on her husband's manners. Instead, she merely seemed to be letting us know that sorry, she didn't condone his behavior. There was a moment of awkward silence. Only Daniel watched the proceedings with an abashed amusement. It took a second for Aunt Winnie to recover. She let out a loud laugh and said, "Oh, go pound sand, Gerard Ramsay. You are still so and you are still so that Miss Buster sold this place to me and not you. And if you hadn't been so rude to the woman, you might have had a chance of buying it. You have no one to blame but yourself." Gerald's blue eyes narrowed, and for a moment I was sure that he was about to blast Aunt Winnie. To my surprise, however, he shrugged his broad shoulders. Touche, Winfred. But this isn't over yet. Mark my words. One day this house will be mine. He picked up a glass of champagne and with a mock toast said, "By fair means a foul." He smiled as he said this, but even from where I stood, I could see that the smile didn't reach his eyes. Oh, so we have finished chapter 4. So that's it for us today. That was chapter 4. Yo, I cannot wait for the day that I will feel like I have improved on my reading and pronunciation. I cannot wait for the day that I know I've improved on my reading and pronunciation. That's what I wanted to say. Yeah. And that, what is wrong with me? And that's it for our reading today. Yo! And that's it for our reading today. Hope to hear from, not hope to hear, hope to see you again tomorrow. Ciao!